Minutes after, so we'll go ahead and get started. As per always, we have way more to talk about than we have time for. So this week we're going to just start out straight in the presentation and then get to updates and whatnot afterwards. And I'm going to share my screen here in a minute. Maybe if I can get the right screen. I only have 2 screens right now. It shouldn't be that hard. Okay. Can you guys see the screen? Let me know when y'all can see it.
Yep, I can see it.
Yep.
Sweet, thanks.
Yes.
Well, hi guys. Good to see y'all joining us. This week or this month, we're going to be having a discussion about fire archaeology and fire and cultural resources, and just basically what we did on the Dixie Fire in Northern California this year, and just kind of give you guys a little bit of a heads up about some of the things that GIS is doing for resource advisors and archaeologists on fires now. And since the Dixie went on for so long and was so big and so many people were involved, there was some really cool stuff that we got to develop and some solutions that I think folks should be aware of, and hopefully you'll get to deploy those if the opportunity presents itself, if you get a fire in your park or you head to another fire and serve as well. But first and foremost, you guys all know me. I'm Heidi. I'm a GIS specialist at Intermountain Regional Office. I served on the Dixie for 8 weeks, from the end of July through the end of September. So it was quite an experience. Worked all over the fire and worked with all the different resource advisors that served on that incident. Well over 150 resource advisors over the course of the time I was there. So got to meet some really special people, and one of them I asked to come join us today to talk, and one of them is Hannah Robinson. She's an archaeologist at the BLM, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Hannah Robinson with the BLM in Utah. I've been an archaeologist for 7 years. I've been doing fire archaeology for about 4. And as Heidi said, we met on the Dixie, which is good and bad.
Right on. Yes, it was quite an incident, without a doubt. Learned a lot. So just to give you guys a little bit of background, here's just kind of the big statistics for the incident. It was the largest single fire in California history. It was almost 1 million acres, 1,500 square miles. Hannah and I got up in a helicopter twice, and there's no way in the world you could actually get all the way around the fire in a helicopter in an hour and a half. It was just a massive, massive fire. An incredible amount of destruction. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Meg. Costed over $630 million to date, but it's going to be way more than that, probably close to $1 billion by the time all the accounting is done for the incident. Over 1,300 structures were lost. That's the big sad news. Well, lots of sad news on it, but 78 helicopters and 77 planes dropped over 21 million gallons of retardant on the incident. On its peak day in about mid-August, there were 579 fire personnel assigned to the incident, which includes bulldozers, hand crews, engines, water tenders, GIS specialists, admin people, you name it. We were all there doing the best we could to mitigate the fire and its effects. They're still tabulating miles of dozer line. The last time I wrote an article about this, we were at 1,900 miles of constructed dozer line, or constructed containment line. We're now over 2,500 miles, and I expect that number to continue to climb over the next year as they continue to find more stuff. So pretty crazy in scale and size and scope and duration. I mean, it's sort of like, I hate to use the word unprecedented, but that's kind of where we're at now with fires. Hannah, you want to take it? You froze on my screen. I'm not sure if you're still there.
I'm still here. Hopefully everyone can hear and see me.
You're good.
looking at some of the people in the chat, it looks like a lot of you are already resource advisors, so this will probably be a little redundant. But we are just advisors. We don't make any decisions. We don't force anything down anyone's throat, even though we'd like to. We're there to help develop a lot of plans. We're there to provide guidance and monitor everything. You know, there's a lot of coordination too between all of us, because not all of us are archaeologists. There's biologists, hydrologists, engineers, you know, the recreation folks who are on the READ team, but you're also coordinating with the local people as well on whatever unit, forest, park, and stuff like that. There's a lot going on, and luckily we do usually have a team of us to help figure it all out. There's a lot of, you know, trying to figure out where the fire's going, what's going to be in the way, what can we do to mitigate any issues that'll happen if it goes one way or another. If we put line here, if we put line there. Heidi, do you want to switch the slide? I got these points literally from our job description on NWCG. So if we're going too fast, because I'm just going to summarize them. You can find them on that website. But we are there to help as best as we can. As an archaeologist, the goal is to get in front of the dozer. It is the goal, and it's not always attainable, as was on the Dixie. We were constantly behind, not being brought in time as they were cutting these massive dozer lines that were going for 3 to 7 blades at one point. But when you have an incident that big and that active, you do what you can. And by the time we switched to suppression repair, I think we did a pretty good job of balancing getting in front of the dozers that were left and trying to figure out where they'd been and how we were going to mitigate all those issues. And so more in the resource, you know, you're trying to get in all the meetings to help with the planning, help with the coordination, help to highlight some other issues you've noticed on the ground that you can get assistance with, get some more equipment in for hydrology and stuff like that. And sometimes you'll have a good team that wants you in those meetings to help figure this out, to help provide some more guidance on where they should be putting in more of their efforts. Sometimes you have to fight with people in a very politically savvy way. Had to do a little bit of both on the Dixie, as Carl knows. And like I said, I got all these descriptions from the website. So if you're not really sure what we do, that's it. You can find it there. But it's a lot of people work, a lot of groundwork, and a lot of coordination and a lot of communication in an effort to do what's best for the resource and assist that home unit as best as possible. I think I'm good, Heidi.
Cool. I'll take, it's coming back slowly but surely. There we go. So first, I wanted to kind of talk about some of the natural resource concerns that we came up with. So the incident started in like mid-July or like the first week of July or something like that, but the top of it blew off in about the third week of July, and my phone rang, and several other people, I think on this call, their phone rang, and we got shipped out to go help with what they knew was going to be a pretty much all summer long incident. There was no way they were going to get this bad boy under containment. California's had a significant drought. The past year was really bad, but it's been in drought for several years now, and so there's just it's in pretty bad shape. So we knew it was going to be bad. But anyway, here's some of the issues that the natural resource folks really had to deal with. Fire retardant misapplications was a big one. There was, I mean, we'll never know how much retardant was misapplied into the streams and wetlands and rivers all across the incident. We have done some work on GIS to determine some of that, but it was really bad. Stream crossings and sensitive habitat, these are everywhere on the Dixie, where dozers just, dozed right into creeks and rivers, and cleaning that stuff up is obviously very tough to do. There's tons of anadromous fish and sensitive aquatic species that are in these streams and wetlands that were getting scooped up into tenders, and water tenders in this case, going into these big tanks and then getting sprayed on the fire. There's just a lot these guys had to worry about, you know, dozer lines coming through, and then they go straight into a wetland and screw up the wetland, and, you know, just really difficult things to repair. We had some T&E species on the incident as well, lots of habitat as well. This is the Sierra yellow-legged frog, which is listed. That habitat was severely impacted on the east zone several times. We had wildlife trees with sensitive species in them that they would, like, this is a resource advisor had come along and marked this particular tree, like, please don't cut this down. This is a sensitive, you know, this tree has a nest in it that's super sensitive, and we'd rather the fires just burn through it than you guys to cut it down. Colin was always looking at these water guzzlers over on the east zone on the Plumas National Forest. He put in a bunch of these. He's the wildlife biologist on that forest, and he'd gone out and put in these guzzlers for wildlife, and there were, I don't know, 30 or 40 or 50 of them on his district. So he was out there clearing out areas around them, trying to prevent them from burning. That was one of his big deals. Of course, erosion on significant slopes. I mean, this is just moon dust, as they call it, dirt that had just been pulverized, and clearly would be a huge problem for erosion once the snows came, which has happened now. And of course, invasive species, no shortage of weeds going on out there. And then the Pacific Crest Trail goes right through the Dixie, and it was dozed several times, give you an idea of what it looks like. So Pacific Crest Trail is a highly, highly used trail. It's a national scenic trail in California that was severely impacted by the Dixie Fire. Something that's a little bit more rings home to you guys, some of the cultural resource concerns that we were facing on the Dixie, and some of the things that the Reeds and the archaeologists were doing out there during suppression activities was, you know, clearing out vegetation around historic sites and cultural resources in general, laying hoses, putting up sprinklers, all that kind of jazz, wrapping structures. So these historic lookout towers and several other types of structures, historic structures, were being wrapped because obviously they couldn't be moved. So those that were of significant, that retained a lot of significance, they were certainly trying to maintain those as much as possible. Lots of railroads, lots of mining activity has gone on in this area for 100 years plus, logging as well. So there was timbers all over the place that needed to be wrapped, a lot up on the Lassen Forest that I spent a lot of time working with the resource advisors up there on. Then once things burned, the archaeologists would have to head back out and document the damage and prepare for consultation with the SHPO and hiring up CRM crews and stuff to come back out and investigate the extent of the damage and wherever it goes from now. I'll let Hannah talk more about that, but of course, all those ditches that were feeding the mines, there was a lot of bulldozers that went right through many of them. So how to repair all that, trying to keep them out of there in the first place, but then of course afterwards, how do you repair that stuff? Burials, of course, no shortage of those all over the incident, and trying to keep bulldozers out of not only historic cemeteries and burial areas, but also, you know, Native American ones that they don't put up headstones. So that was a significant challenge for resource advisors and archaeologists during suppression, and then documenting any sort of destruction and damage after the suppression activities had wound down and we were working in repair. Another issue is that culturally modified trees. Lots of arbor glyphs in the aspens up there in the high country. So these were kind of all over the place, and the Reeds were, you know, marking these as trees as well, not just sensitive habitat for owls and whatnot, but also arbor glyphs that we didn't want to lose. So, and then finally, this is actually one of those success story moments. This is a historic cabin that was wrapped by the archaeologist you see in that photo, Tyler, and they cleared out around it and were able to keep the fire from burning it down. So he was out there checking out his success story right there after the fire had come through. So that's a little bit of a background about some of the issues that we were looking at on the Dixie this summer. Kind of transitioning over to how I worked with the Reeds. I didn't get out on the line one day on this incident, even though I was brought on as a Reed. I ended up doing GIS the whole time, unsurprisingly. But it was good because we were able to, and thanks to Justin, who's actually attending this call, he was able to come up with this resources at risk maps that we had developed for the resource advisors. We created these in ArcGIS Pro, and we were able to do some really cool stuff with this. Resource advisors, they come from all over the country. Rarely do we have a whole team of reads that are actually from the local area. So you get, I mean, we had people from Florida and people from New York and people from Oregon and Colorado and all over the place who were serving on this incident and clearly have no local knowledge of the resources. And so this became a really critical tool for reads and ARCs to be able to get out ahead during suppression, to get out ahead of the bulldozers and just flag off stuff. So even if you were like a hydrologist and you knew nothing about archaeology, for example, you had this, like, there's something important here. Don't let the dozer bolt, doze this down. So it was really helpful for folks with no local resource knowledge to be able to have in their pocket or on their tablet this information that they were just, trying to guide the dozers in the right direction when possible. These are mobile map packages. The cool thing that we're able to do in GIS that Justin figured out was how to make them expire. And there's a tool that we can use in GIS, the publisher extension, that allows us to actually expire maps, which was really cool for a couple of reasons. One, it helps the local unit feel a whole lot more comfortable about releasing information to I don't want to say unqualified individuals, but non-archaeologists in the case of archaeology, knowing that they're not going to leave the incident with any data because it times out and they can't access it. So that was helpful, but also because when the fire was moving fast, you don't want to provide information that's stale 3 days, a week later. They're looking at something and the fire's gone 10 miles since you gave them a map. So having those things time out was really helpful. And then when we had to share things in remote situations, we could password protect everything, which was really neat. Another really great way to be able to share sensitive information appropriately with the right people in remote situations. So we were able to develop some really cool solutions to a fire that was so huge. I mean, the ICPs were, the incident command posts, the fire camps were over 100 miles away from each other. And there were times where I was the only GIS specialist serving the reads, and I couldn't be in 3 places at once, obviously. So those were some pretty handy solutions for this incident. We deployed them in ArcGIS Explorer, but next year it'll all go under, we'll have basically Collector and Explorer will be in field maps. And so the reads aren't going to have to switch back and forth between applications. They'll be able to just use the one application and then be able to see, here's all the resources at risk, cultural, natural, et cetera. And then here's all the operational data. And it'll be a lot smoother, I think, next year. And I'm really looking forward to that. So for field data collection, so the Explorer map, the resources at risk map, that's a non-editable, the park and the 2 forests had given us their data and we provided it to them and to the resource advisors in a non-editable format. The field data collection stuff, the collector maps, they're actually, the resource advisors are interacting with the same data that the rest of the fire is using. So we set these up. This particular screenshot shows sort of the repair web map that the resource advisors would see. And so they sort of knew what was there, what stage of repair it was in once we got to repair, and also any comments that were made about it, whether or not there was, I don't know, some cleanup that needed to happen there or didn't need to be repaired at all. The cool thing about these is you can put that same operational incident information onto a web map and then everyone's kind of seeing the same stuff. So in terms of, it keeps everyone on the same page. So you have the common operating picture all the way across the incident, whether you're boots on the ground, you're sitting in fire camp, or you're at the Geographic Area Coordination Center several hundred miles away, you know what's going on. We're all seeing the same information. One of the things that we worked really hard on, me and Hannah, was this archaeological clearance stuff. So this field got brought into the schema for fire. We got it brought in 3 years ago, thanks to Elizabeth Hale. She worked really hard on this when she was on the Ferguson. And she got this in, and what we were able to do on the Dixie this year is really put archaeology first by saying, we need to get the archaeologists out there and take a look at these dozer lines and make sure that we're not going to create more damage when we move into repair. So there's already been damage from the dozer. He's come through, destruction has occurred, but we don't want to make it worse when we bring him back in to repair that damage. Obviously with archaeology, it only gets worse. So we were sending archaeologists to clear lines for mechanical repair. If there was no sites there, we were good to go. Great, send in the dozer or send in the excavator or whatever. But if it was a sensitive area, the resource advisors, archaeologists would say, no, let's just have a hand crew go in there, or sometimes no repair at all, because it would just, no matter what we did, it would make it worse. So that was something I was really proud of, some of the work that we did on the incident. And then the rest of the reads were working on, repair status and comments, and just kind of making sure that the repair was going according to plan, that we were executing the boots on the ground that we had appropriately, and were able to get it, as much priority repair accomplished in the time that we had, because the fire was pretty well contained in about mid-September. But snows fly within like a month from then, and it did, and we've had a lot of rain and stuff in that area, so it was really time sensitive, and we wanted to make sure that we were doing a really good job about getting things accomplished in a timely manner. We also had on this map, so all these different colors are basically telling you different things, and if you're on the fire, you know what they mean, but it's really helpful to be able to kind of look at the colors, the halos that we have on everything, to sort of tell you what stage every point or line is in on the incident. And that's what all these different colors mean. Green's done, but then, purple it hasn't been evaluated yet, for example. We also had what they called potential operational delineations, which basically these are dozer lines that they would want to be able to reopen. So they wanted to have sort of a minimal repair job done to them, make sure that the ATVs and stuff couldn't get out there in future years, but if they needed to reopen them for upcoming fires, they could do that. So we had these pod layers as well that helped the resource advisors know what the forest wanted to do with these areas. Obviously the park wanted everything closed back up, and they only had 3 miles of dozer line in the park. Big success story there. This is a GIS piece that I worked really hard on for the entire 8 weeks I was on this incident. Trying to convince firefighters not to put out fire is about the hardest thing to do on the planet. So, okay, it's hard. Anyway, so some of the stuff that we had to we worked with team GIS specialists on were these different sort of special treatment areas. And we broke them out into these 4 different groups. Retardant avoidance is super common. All the pilots who drop retardant all know about retardant avoidance, but terrestrial operators, which is a new thing, they didn't know about this. Drafting avoidance was a new thing I've never seen on a fire before. There was this weird mineral or something in a couple of the creeks up in the Lassen forest, and if that mineral would be sprayed, it could be toxic to firefighters. So we basically said, don't draft out of this creek, right? Suppression exclusion, there were lots of different things that we kind of threw into these dozer exclusion and suppression, dozer avoidance and suppression exclusion areas. But because the fire went on for so long, on short incidents, you don't really get a chance to kind of prevent suppression activities to go on in a certain place. But because this incident went on for so long, and we knew what was coming, we knew where the fire was headed, and we knew that there were certain things there that we wanted to mitigate. We looked at, basically asked the teams to try to have a light footprint, if at all possible. The suppression exclusion was just stay out. And a lot of times that was actually because they're hazmat sites. It was tailings, mining tailings, pot grows that had all kinds of toxic crap in the soil. Special interest areas, obviously sacred landscapes that are super, super important to the natives that are there. Had to be really careful, obviously, of how we worked through that stuff. So we worded everything very politically correctly, as Hannah was alluding to. But we also had dozer avoidance areas. So California's only wolf pack is in that area, or at least at the time it was their only reported wolf pack. And we wanted to make sure that their habitat wasn't destroyed by dozers. And fortunately, by some miracle, the wolf pack survived, even though it burned incredibly hot in their den area. There was monitoring plots that the forest didn't want destroyed by dozers. Obviously, the Pacific Crest Trail did get dozed a few times. We did lose the communication line for a couple days. So anyway, these were just some examples of some of the things that as Resource Advisor GIS folks, we were able to work with the teams to try to say, hey, let's try to have a little bit of a lighter footprint than we've had historically. So some cool stuff that we were doing there. And I'm really hopeful, and maybe Martin will want to talk about this, but that we can start working towards this as these fires just get bigger and bigger every year. And Hannah, you're up.
So Heidi just wanted me to talk about becoming a reed, a reef, and an arc on an incident. Reed is your regular resource advisor. Reef is a fire-lined resource advisor, and then arc is just a qualification that has become more and more important for us to have out there, and because we need more archaeologists on the line, because so many more of our cultural resources are getting hit and adversely affected by the fire, and mostly by the suppression activity, unfortunately. So for the coursework for Reed, really basic, which at the end of this presentation, Heidi and I have a couple links, and one of them is to all these courses, so it'll be really easy for everyone to do. You have to do the National Incident Management System, ICS system, initial response, and then the N9042 Resource Advisor course, which is held, I want to say every spring. Last year or this year, they held one that was virtual, that had well over 500 people on it. So there's always room to get that done. And then for Reef, you just build on to those previous courses with the firefighter training, wildland fire behavior, human factors and wildlife fire service, wildland fire safety training, and your annual refresher, and then a moderate to arduous pack test. So for Reed, you don't need a pack test for your reef work to be a type 2 firefighter. You do. You can get on the line with moderate, but it's always recommended you do arduous. There's a level of trust that is put into us when we come out on the line, and some of that is built immediately as soon as they know that you're arduous, that you're type 2 qualified, that you've had to do some of the things that involve actively dealing with fire instead of just all the resource advising work. But it's up to you. Moderate, I want to say it's you walk 2 miles with a 25-pound pack vest, which someone can correct me if I'm wrong. For arduous, it's 3 miles with 45 pounds, and you have 45 minutes to do that. And so there's definitely a level of fitness that goes into getting on the line, goes into doing some of this stuff, and it's for your safety and for the safety of others around you, so you're not becoming an incident within an incident, we'll call it. And then on top of all this, you need your appropriate PPE, which is your Nomex, the beautiful green and yellow, a pack that will hold your fire shelter and all your equipment, your hand tool. We all have preferences. I like the Pulaski. Some people like to have their shovel or just, a regular axe or something like that, or a McLeod. And so once you do all this, you complete the fire refresher, get your pack test done, you got the courses, you'll get your red card. And the most important thing is to make sure that it says either reed or reef, and then arc on there if you're an archaeologist, or hydro. Those have become very important to us as well on fires. If you have that arc qualification on there, it's really beneficial to who is putting out resource advisor calls. On the Dixie, we kept putting out calls and calls and calls for archaeologists, and we just weren't getting them. There's not enough of us out there. There's not enough archaeologists who can leave their home units to go and assist on these giant incidents that have so many resources at risk. So if everyone can get pack tested and get the ARC on their red card, I think we'll be in a better place next year, because this was a really tight spot to be in. I did a full 21-day stint. I know we were begging a bunch of people to extend, but it's really up to your home unit how long you can stay away. And it really helps to be in that PL5 place, because then they can't really deny you. The Secretary of the Interior puts out the letter. It really helps. Heidi, if you want to change the Next slide. So getting a fire assignment. Once you've gotten all your qualifications done, you want to make sure that you're in the system, the IQCS system, as qualified and available. I always call my dispatch to get my availability set for either national or local. It's just easier, gets me a really good communication system with them. So if I have any issues on an incident and I need my home unit's assistance, they're on it. But you want to reach out to your GAC training coordinator so you've got all that figured out. And fortunately, we have a big cohort of ARC and READs. There's they put out trainings every month. They put out the fire archaeology training. They have a whole resource drive for us to utilize, and that's where people will also put out their request for archaeologists, resource advisors, or reefs, which Heidi, I think at the end, will explain how to get on that list. But it's really a networking thing to get on these incidents. Sometimes just going available won't get you pulled, because we're doing a lot more name requests because it's getting harder and harder to just get those regular requests filled. If you know people, the faster you get pulled, the faster you can get on assignment, and the more people will start to know you, and then they'll just keep requesting you. So once we get on that list, that's always set. Sometimes things are slow. You can start putting out feelers with the FMO you have, or with other forests that you know are on fire. You can just hit them up and say, hey, I hear you have an incident. I'm available. Do you need anything? Sometimes you can get pulled that way. I've been lucky like that once. But it's pretty much how it usually goes. There's not a lot into it. Once you get out there, it's a lot easier. The READ and ARC list is I highly recommend. That's where we find almost all of our assignments these days. Heidi, do you want to change? So you're on a fire. You made it. I just wanted to point out some big things that happen once you get there, because you have all those job duties and that I kind of explained and had shown previously, but it's a lot more than just checking things off a list. A lot more than just walking around and saying, hey, this is a thing. You have to develop relationships. So people want to come to you and they want to ask for your assistance. They want to ask your opinion. They want to ask for your advice. And to do that, sometimes you have to barter. As you can see, I added a photo of Red Bull and Waterloo. That is becoming high currency on a fire. Bribery is sometimes your best friend just to get people to talk to you. I find it best to just hand a drink and immediately start talking, because they're in shock that someone just gave them a cold drink. They're excited that someone gave them a cold drink, and now they're forced to listen to me talk about the resource I'm concerned about. It resulted in a lot of good relationships on the Dixie. People knew if they wanted a drink, they could find me, and if I needed something, I would give them that drink. And it just greases the wheels. It starts funny conversations. People will call you on the radio being like, hey, we found something. Can you come and look at it? Your face is in their mind. Your concerns are in their mind. And, you just created a friend. And of course, this leads up to communication. Communication is the first thing to fall through on a fire, which is exactly what happened with the PCT, which is exactly what happened with a bunch of other things on the fire. When you have an incident this big, it's going to happen. But as long as you keep charging ahead, communicating, grabbing people, telling them what's going on, why it's happening, how can we get ahead of this? How can we stop this? At least you're working in the right direction. You have to communicate. You can't shut down. If you're going to get mad, do it in a secret place where no one can see you, because we have to work together to get to some of these resolutions, to get to some of these good stories that Heidi and I have and some other people have on these incidences where you're like, this started out so bad, but because we were able to talk through it, brainstorm, work together, we now have this better relationship, we have this better result than if we would have just like let everything continue to break down because that one person did this one thing and like it just resulted in all this. So communicate. I will always advocate for communication. Managing your time. That really comes down to also knowing where the action is happening. If you're an archaeologist, you're looking for the active dozer. You're looking for where people are going to be putting down tools, where people are going to be staging, where people are going to be messing around with the dirt, with possible high sensitive areas. And so you're trying to figure out where you're best at play. And that usually comes from your morning meetings, from all those briefings, from those breakouts. And, you know, you can spend some time here. Once you got people on lock on this one location, then you can jet on over to another area that you have concerns about. And the more you communicate, the more relationships you build, the less time you're having to spend at each location where you're having concerns. And then rest, of course. Heidi knows sometimes it's really hard to get rest on these incidents, especially when you're so committed to the cause, you're so committed to making sure the best result is happening, that you're doing what you can for the resource, for the local communities, for the people who you're having to FaceTime with every day and tell them we did our best. But you have to take care of yourself first. You have to outlive the incident. So, you know, do your 15 and grab your 8. And that includes knowing your limitations. You know, some dozers can go up 45 to 50 degree slopes, no problem, but a person shouldn't be doing that. It's unnecessary. It's putting you at risk. It's, you know, creating a situation where you didn't need to be in the first place. Same with active fireline. If you are not comfortable, if you are not feeling well, if you're just having a day, you know, pull yourself out, take a rest. No one's going to give you crap about it. Like I said, you have to outlive the incident. Take care of yourself. We're there to help. We're not there to fall on the sword. And, you know, just remember, you know, you'll get through it. It'll be okay. And we're all in this together. So if we're a team, someone will pick up the slack while you take a minute to help yourself. And the best thing about a fire is that, you know, you have so many opportunities to learn. You're working with so many new people and so many new situations and so many new places that you're able to learn about new jobs, new archaeology, you know, new types of suppression that could benefit or hurt. You know, you're learning from all these amazing people who happen to be thrown together just because of a fire. Take advantage of it. It's amazing what you'll find out if you take a minute to talk to somebody about what's going on and like how they would handle it instead of just telling them what you think's going on and having them and then telling them what you want done. We're humans, we're in this together. We got to figure out what we're doing, and it's best if we're all in on the process instead of just swooping in and being a little heavy-handed. I think that's all I had, Heidi.
I think you're right, Hannah. And Hannah needs to take some of her own advice and rest more often. Just saying.
Thanks.
All right, let me get to the next one here. Oh yeah, so this one's on me because I think this is kind of, I think it's super important for folks to know about. I am subject to furlough, and when I got this position, I was like, well, why don't I just go on furlough, or why don't I just go on fire during my furlough? And it is actually allowed. You're probably going to hear from if you ever ask about this, most likely you'll get pushback. It is in the NPS Reference Manual 18. I've sent it all the way up to Boise and back down, and it's approved. So if there's anyone out there who's interested in serving, who's subject to furlough, you can go on fire during your furlough. So holler at me if you guys have any questions about that. I'm happy to send you guys the email and make sure that that goes on, because I think this is a good opportunity for those of us who are subject to furlough to be able to continue to have a job. What an idea. Anyway, I won't get on my soapbox on that, but I just wanted folks to know about that because I think it's super important. And then I'm going to throw these links up in our chat here in just a second, but there's some additional resources out there. Sort of a takeaway that I wanted folks to know about. The the big takeaways and the reason that I wanted to give this presentation with Hannah today was two big takeaways. One, having your GIS data ready for when the inevitable happens is the only thing in today's modern fire regime that is going to help save your resources. So I know I'm probably preaching to the choir here to some extent, but I can't impress upon you enough how important it is to get your GIS data ready for when the stuff happens. I worked with the two forests up there in the park. The park was ready. One of the forests is ready. The other forest was not. And Justin can speak more eloquently probably than me to the struggle that presented to those of us who were trying to, get this information into the hands of resource advisors, and it's just a mess. And how frustrating that is as a person who shows up and just wants to, we have so much work to do as GISS. Is the last thing we can handle is we can't handle data management on a fire. So, Justin, is that you?
Yeah, that's me.
I figured you probably want to say something. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even just with cultural data. It was kind of with all other sorts of data too. It's just getting the data at random times when people just say, oh, I found something in this folder or file. It might be useful. And then you have to go through, sift through it. Is it a duplicate? Is it even representing what it's supposed to be representing? I mean, it can be frustrating because we're updating these mobile map packages every single day with new data that comes in as best we can. But if the data is not ready and organized and we don't have the metadata with it, then we really struggle to be able to trust it and then put it in those mobile map packages to give to our resource advisors.
Thank you, Justin. Perfectly said, as expected. Yeah, it was a huge struggle for us when we first got there. Thank God I had Justin, because I couldn't possibly try to do all the things that he was doing and the things I was doing at the same time. So suffice it to say, spend the time now. It's going to happen. No matter, even if you're on the East Coast, you'll get a hurricane or something. Like, just get it together now, because it's our job to protect these resources. And then the second thing is, as Hannah did mention, there is nowhere near enough archaeologists serving. And we really, really, really need more. If there's anything that you need, reach out to myself or Hannah. There's a lot of other people in the service. We can help get you where you need to get to lend a hand. Awesome that Martin's coming on. Martin, you want to speak up on that or anything else?
I wanted to thank you, Heidi, Justin, and Hannah, for putting this on. This is a super important message you're sharing. I would love for you to expand a little in the area of getting your data ready. How about getting a plan to share that data ready in event of an emergency? I would love for you to elaborate on that, especially with your resources at risk map that you referred to earlier. I think that's going to solve so many problems and so much unnecessary damage. So how can units collaborate on getting those data ready and also getting that data out into the field when it's really necessary? That is often where it fails on an incident.
100%. Yeah, Justin, did you want to jump on that? I feel like I just saw him leave. Maybe not. Okay, then if you are still here, Justin, you want to jump on this one, go for it. He actually, Martin, Justin spent, oh God, I don't even know how many weeks. I mean, he worked on it for 3 weeks, but probably the first solid week just getting the data organized that came from one of the forests. Standards. Having things sitting on your C drive because you haven't gotten it into an authoritative data set is the Achilles heel of a GIS specialist in an incident response situation. Please get your data into standards. If you're in the Intermountain region, please reach out to me. I will help you. We get our data into the same configuration, and then it became a whole lot easier to work with. Our last in volcanic data and our last in national forest data was much more deployable because everything was in the same container. It all looked the same. So standards, get it all into the same projection, get it all into the same database, geodatabase. Secondly, when the team comes on, I got to be careful about how much time I use on this because I could just talk about this forever. But when the team comes on, oftentimes you're not going to get a GISS just working with the reads. It's pretty rare that happens, and it has to be a huge incident that's going to take a lot of resource advisors to help mitigate. So oftentimes, most of the time, you'll be working with the incident management team, GIS, and there are probably some GIS specialists on here who have had the unfortunate experience of struggling with resource advisors because reads tend to be, and archaeologists tend to be high maintenance because they're archaeologists who understand GIS and they understand the power of the technology. So working politically savvily with your team GISSs is absolutely critical. If you're just a read and you have a lead read, let the lead read work with the GISS. If a GIS shop, they're inundated with requests coming from every direction. They don't have time for one-off maps because your special species is at risk or whatever. There just isn't that kind of time. So let your lead read work with the situation unit who works with the GISS on these incidents. If it's a smaller incident, you know, and it's just you, then obviously you can go over to the sit and talk to them. So does that help, Martin? Does that meet your needs?
It does, but still there's a lot of us out there at local units that are faced with programs that are not ready to share. They have not thought about that huge emergency. I know that there's some folks out here on this call that are from Washington. Big fire is coming to you. Are you ready? You know, is your data, you know, binned correctly, identified, sorted, and how are you going to bring that data to the resource advisors once they arrive on scene? You know, how are you going to share? I think that's where a lot of gains need to be made, I think, in the field right now. And it's really great that we have a system for that now. That blueprint that you shared, Heidi, is phenomenal. And I think we need to adopt that, you know, everywhere if we can. Totally.
Yeah, and I'm really excited about that mobile, because we had looked at, or Justin had looked at 3 different applications when we first arrived. One was Carry Map, the other was Avenza, and the other was Explore. And because of the password protection and the timeout functionality that we had, the expiration functionality that we had on that, we decided to go that route. And ultimately, it's going to get roped up into field maps, and it's really just going to be a good solution. So I really do look forward to that. I'm going to be spending some time this winter, and hopefully, Rich Schwab, I can hit you up for some of this, but. Yeah, we'd really like to improve that whole mobile map package piece. Hannah, do you have something to say?
I was just going to say that without Heidi's whole methodology and package and stuff, when we flipped immediately to suppression repair, we would have been screwed without her. The way she was able to just listen to us, apply that, and make it so it not only made sense to us ologists, but to the IC team, freaking magic. And I'm already starting to do stuff like that over here because I already had the whole system, but like with her, the way she did it, it went across the field so easy with like little tweaks here and there because of preferences and stuff. But like, it was beautiful. It was like butter spreading. Loved it.
It was magic. We had fun together. And actually for the GIS specialists on the phone, we need more of you too, especially folks who are interested in working with resource advisors and helping out, getting this information into their hands. We're starting to have a shift in that direction, which is great. But it's been decades of a struggle. And anyway, I'll stop there. Tommy, did you have a question?
Well, more of comments. I'm Tommy Barnes from Big South Fork. I'm the primary GIS on one of the top 1 teams, and I was out about as long as Heidi. For all the cultural resource stuff, I think I started the end of July. My last shift on a fire was October 10th this year. And get your data ready. Yeah, I've dealt with hurricanes, tornadoes, fires, anything like that. And I've dealt with archaeologists who I go talk to them and I say, we're going to be bulldozing, we're going to be clearing, we're going to do this. Where do you not want us to put a dozer? Create those exclusion zones for archaeology, for threatened and endangered species. We don't need to know from the operational side on GIS what is there. We just need to know those places where we don't want to put equipment in and the retardant avoidance areas and all that. We don't need to know what's there. We just need to know all those exclusion zones. And if you can get that early on, at least on my team, the ops people really take all that kind of stuff into consideration when we're putting in dozer lines and that kind of stuff. Get your data ready. And it may be a small part, you don't think it's going to happen. It can very well happen. You can be a much like with the Dixie Fire, you can be a small part, end up being a small part of a much bigger incident. Know where your historic structures are, all that kind of stuff that you need to protect, and develop a data set for that for your area so that you can hand to a team when they come in and GIS people said,
Yep.
These are no equipment and all that kind of stuff. And I want to make a pitch for any of you guys who want to learn about doing fire GIS. We're always looking for more GIS people. I had a fire this year where I was the only qualified GIS on the team, and I had 5 trainees. Most of them were good, but I had 5 trainees and me. 3 of them on their first assignment. We are extremely short for GIS.
Yeah, I'll actually dovetail into that one, Tommy. On the 18th, Thursday, at I think 11 Mountain Time, the PGIS call this month, Marie Landis, the GIS specialist at Big Bend, is going to be leading it, and it is specifically for how to become a GISS on incidents. So any GIS specialists out there interested in getting involved in fire, attend that. Myself, Skip, and Sarah Hartsberg have all contributed to her presentation, and so it's going to be chock full of good stuff. So yes, we need more GISSs. Yes, we need more reads. Yes, we need more archaeologists. There's no shortage of work. It's super rewarding to come home with the skill sets you learn on a fire too.
Yeah, and you don't have to be in a job description where it actually says GIS. If you have really good GIS skills for fire GIS, you can do it. You don't have to be in a job description at your homework that says you are a GIS specialist.
Yeah, that's true, but you're also not going to go to a fire and learn how to do GIS. So I got to kind of temper that too.
You've got to have good GIS skills with ArcPro, and you know how to use ArcPro. Yeah. And then the fire terminology and all that we can learn, but you have to be able to use ArcPro.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Thanks, Tommy. There was some questions up here in the chat. I'm going to grab Carl's last one because I haven't read through all of them. I don't know, Hannah, if you want to jump on some of these, but Carl's last one, training outlook for GIS amid COVID. So it's not decided yet. So I'm the National Park Service representative to the Geospatial Subcommittee for the National Wildland Flora Coordinating Group. Yeah, NWCGGSC, NPS rep. Anyway, so there's some stuff that we're talking about in there. Our tentative plan is to take the Intro to GIS class that we stood up 2 years ago, which has basically been the in lieu of S341, which is the GIS class. Our intention is to turn that online class into the S341 class and provide that remotely to students in the spring. This spring, actually, hopefully that will work out. And then our intention is to take the in-person S341 class and turn that into S441. So it's an advanced course for advanced, like kind of lead GISS type stuff, where we're doing analysis, working with WFDIS, working with raster data, that kind of stuff, which is above and beyond what's typically called for on a fire. And then also to convert the refresher class to being required. Because frankly, this technology has gone way past what it was a few years ago, and we need people who are in there every year doing this stuff, staying current. We can't have some folks out there who's like, oh, I did it 5 years ago. Well, then you might as well just take some crayons to a fire because it's about as useful. Hannah, you got some?
No, it looks like everyone's, like Carl and Rich and Joanne are all answering the questions. You guys have a good group here to rely on. I just wanted to say, I'm better at the people aspect of this thing. I'm able to call people and get on incidents and call people and get them to do what I need them to do. You have a very large group here who can help you figure out the rest if what I'm saying doesn't fit you. It's very different for everybody. It's whatever path works best. But I am available for questions, for comments. This is my first time doing this, so if you guys have some feedback. But yeah, I just wanted to say you guys really know what you're doing. It's really cool to be a part of this and see the good community that's in this chat.